what drives you to do things like that? Like, because there's definitely a difference when I see people that are just driven for whatever reason to accomplish things. Where do you think that comes from for you?
Well, it's pretty much a witness type thing.
Mm.
I got back from the war in 1972. I got out of the service and spent 18 months in Vietnam. I was living in East Dallas, and I hadn't changed my voter registration in the spring of 1972. They were having an election, primaries. I had to come back to Grand Prairie. That's where my residence was. That's
Mm.
where my voter registration was. So I had to come back to Grand Prairie to vote in the primaries for the 72 election. And I had a motorcycle at that time. I had a Kawasaki, a 350 Kawasaki, but my wife I'd only had for a month or so, she was concerned that I would get on the old toll road here in Grand Prairie and going through Grand Prairie and actually drive over here at 70 miles an hour and that sort of thing. She didn't want me to be doing that. So I said, okay, I'm just going to go down through downtown Dallas. I'll just go down through downtown Dallas and come back on Jefferson and Division or Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. Well, going back, and I came over here and did my voting thing, did what I needed to do. I went back, and as I was going back, I was going by on Main Street, and I was Main Street and Elm, kind of in there, but I was on one of those streets over there, and they kind of split right there. If you're going east, they split Main Street and Commerce, and I was wanting to go on Commerce Street, and so anyway, I'm going along there, and this car comes up and hits me from the side.
Mm.
This car comes up and hits me from the side. Now I have to do a kind of a backup because this car just hit me, but backing up to the night before, my first wife was a strong Christian influence from her. She had had Hodgkin's when she was 17.
Mm.
She lived through that. They caught it early. She was a devout Christian. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we connected so well because she was a Christian, I was a Christian, and she read the Bible pretty good. Now I had my own Bible. I had my Bibles in Vietnam. But one night she was actually reading the Bible in bed, and I'm laying there, thinking when she's going to turn the light on, type thing. But she's reading the Bible, and I said, and I kind of like to just turn to the Bible and pick a verse and see how it applies to me, right? Well,
You just explained about 90% of Christian readers of the Bible. Yeah.
I said, okay, I thought I'd pick a New Testament book, and I'd pick an early chapter, and I'd pick an early verse, and I said, how about Ephesians 2:8, and so she read it, and she was reading from the Living Bible, the old green Living Bible that so many people bought and had back in the 70s. And so that says, because of his kindness, you've been saved through trusting Christ. And even trusting is not of yourself. It too is a gift from God, at least any man should boast. And God planned years ago that you should spend this life in helping others. So, and that extends it down to several verses, 8, 9, and 10.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, well, how does that apply to me? How does that apply to me? Well, the next day I get hit by this car on my motorcycle, and I had a fear of that happening, and I thought, how am I going to survive that? Well, that car hit me, and I was able to maintain my connection with the car. He hit me. He was slowing down. I was probably only going 20, 25 miles an hour. I was going pretty slow because it was going right through the downtown in area where President Kennedy got shot.
Mm-hmm.
So we were right there in that area, and this guy had two gals in the car in the front seat with him, and I'm sure they made a last minute decision to pull over into my lane to try to get to where they were going. So we drove side by side. My motorcycle pushed up against his car for probably a period of 30 or 40 yards, maybe not that far, but it seemed like it. And all of a sudden I was able to pull away, and he pulled out in the middle of Commerce, and he stopped and he said, "Are you okay?" And I'm kind of looking around, and I've got my mirror that was on my motorcycle. It was pushed in because I'd been pushed up, and my ankle was a little bit sore from having ridden against that car for that length of time and pressuring. And the reason I was doing that because I didn't know if I could pull into the adjacent lane or not, because I couldn't look back and see the traffic, anything behind me. I was trying to deal with the car that was right here next to me. So I realized I had just been hit by a car. I did not have any damages at all to me, and at that point I didn't realize I didn't remember what that verse said that she had read. That my wife had looked up, at my request, she looked up and read that verse. But I didn't remember the verse. I didn't remember the verse that I said. And so I had to go back and look at that. And because of his kindness, you've been saved through trusting Christ.
Mm.
And then you ask me what keeps me going. The last part of those 2 or 3 verses is that you should spend your life in helping others. So those verses are on the inside of my ring.
Oh my goodness. What an amazing story. Just picking a verse to hear how it applies to you.
And at the time that it was read, I thought, how does that apply to me? Well, it applied to me. It was God's reminder.
Yes.
It was God's reminder that I had just come through 18 months of in Vietnam in a combat zone that had rockets and mortars happening every night. And I lived through that unscathed. I didn't have any mental issues. I didn't have any physical issues. I was able to come back and step right into society and do what I had to do. So that's part of my life deal. And sometimes you just have to get emotional about things.
Yes.
And you get that way.
Yes.
I'm 77. What can I do between now and the time that I go? Look at what Ruthie Jackson did until she was 90 something. Right?
Well, you picked the epitome of purpose. But you know what? I'm going to clip this whole part out and make it its own separate video, because I think that kids need to understand what purpose feels like and what it looks like. You're going to make me cry. We have a lot of teenage kids that don't know what their purpose is. And I hope that they can hear this and understand that.
Well, they wash around in the society, and to the most part, we're not giving our kids enough responsibilities.
That's true.
To know exactly where they are and where they are in life, and how they can actually interact and be a part of life. We protect them to a certain degree and not giving them those things.
Yes.
We're going to make it easy for them. We'll make it easy for them at an early stage. Is going to make it harder for them at a later stage.
I completely agree. And they get to a point where they don't know what to do. And helping others, I just posted a Facebook post. Are we friends on Facebook? I can't remember if we are or not.
I've probably defriended you.
No, you did not. I had to start my profile over. I literally just posted a week ago, helping others is the purpose. It will get you out of depression. It will stop you from thinking only about yourself. Getting up and doing something for other people is
all you have to do as a veteran to realize just how lucky you are
Mm-hmm.
is to step into a VA hospital.
Mm.
That's all you have to do, Jenna.
Sure.
You see those veterans that have not made as successful a transition back into civilian life as what perhaps you have, or perhaps they came through the war with frailties and injuries and everything that some you can see, some you can't see,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a it's a real challenge to do that. I know you had, and you mentioned you're working with the veterans there at your retirement homes
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, and I appreciate that. And most all the different retirement homes that we sing at, we play at, and stuff. I like to tell everybody our group we like to sing at these retirement homes because they can't see or hear us. you know,
You pick a
but
good audience that won't be judgmental.
but but these retirement homes, most of them have pictures of the veterans that are in their community on the wall somewhere. Some bulletin board somewhere along the halls. They've got pictures of the veterans that are there in their facility.
Yep.
So that's a good.
We did, and it was I loved seeing it. But I'm glad that you share. I'm glad I asked that last question. That's an amazing story.
Well, I didn't mean to be teared up in this thing, and but there's times in your life when you can get to the emotional state and actually show it. You saw McIlroy doing that on the green there on the 18th green there just this last Sunday.
That's
at
true.
the Masters.
Mm-hmm.
Something that he'd been working his whole life to attain, and he finally made it. I know how blessed I am, but there's still challenges in life. Because of my faith, I can step through those challenges, and I can help others. And whether it's taking a bunch of church guys on fishing trips, or whether it's praying with a fireman or a policeman,
Mm-hmm.
some of our first responders. It's just at this point, it's what I'm doing, and I'm glad that I'm able to do it, and I'm glad that I can share that with the people of Grand Prairie.
I